What a great panel there. Good afternoon to all of you. And again, you know, we're not quite moving on the theme of transportation, but we will cover a little bit of transportation because we're going to talk about supply chains in a couple of minutes now, in a couple of seconds. So thank you all for coming. We'll let let the crowd settle here a little bit, but please, please, I'd rather you all stay and get settled in with us here. We're going to be looking at this will be the year of green supply chains. Not this year so much, we're actually going to give ourselves a little bit of space for next year. I'm Eithne, Treanor, I'm your moderator for this panel. Let me get my great panel up here. We have a small panel, but very detailed here. Key people that you need to know. The President and CEO for Financial Services, GE Vernova, joins me here. Nomi Ahmed. Nomi, if I can put you here. And from THIQAH, we're absolutely delighted to have the Deputy Chief on the Business Solutions Engineer, Ahmed, Alalola. So there we go. Here's our group. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I don't need to give you a big introduction on what green supply chains might or might not mean, because these gentlemen are going to tell us if it's actually possible, and indeed, probably more important, if we're heading in the right direction. We all know where we're heading, I think. There wasn't a great plan put in place on how we get there, but when it comes to green supply chains, we're going to have to do something about it. Nomi, we're progressing towards net zero. I'm not going to say whether we're doing it fast enough or slow enough, but the green supply chain actually must happen, and we don't really have a choice. So where do we start? Scope 1, Scope 2, and I get the feeling maybe not everybody is aligned on this.
Well, Eithne, first of all, thank you for having me on the panel. It's great to be here and to share some thoughts. Look, it's clear we are missing the plot. We're far away from where we need to be. I saw a recent report on BBC from the UN scientists, and we're missing the plot. Now, I think the first thing starts with just being honest with ourselves. Are we really looking at the right data? Are we taking an honest assessment of where we are in Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3? And I think companies are now increasingly becoming conscious. They are reporting. We just put out a sustainability report at GE Vernova that very accurately and carefully tracks our commitments and how we are on that journey.
Okay.
So why do this?
No, I want to talk about that later. Don't tell me what you're doing now. I want you to give me a feel for just how big this is, how bad this is. Should they be all really scared out there? Give us a feeling for, I mean, because I think sometimes we don't understand the extent and the scope.
Well, look, other than wrecking this planet we live on, I think our stakeholders are dangerously approaching the point where they're making decisions. So who are these stakeholders? So if you're owned, we're publicly owned. If your shareholders are looking at you as a stock or investing equity in you, they're evaluating you on how well you're doing on your ESG, Scope 1, Scope 2. If you've got customers, so we see this with some of the recent regulations in the European Union, for example, if you are not within the green realm, your customers will not buy from you. And number 3, your own people. The employees who have joined you for a purpose, those people will no longer be with you if you are not on the path to, call it righteousness here. So I think if you don't have owners, if you don't have customers, and you don't have employees, I think it's a little bit questionable what's going to happen to these businesses.
So, and even when you think about it, I like that on the path to righteousness, but it's also, yes, the right thing to do, but it's still going to be, it's going to look right on the bottom line, I think, eventually, too.
Look, eventually it's good business. And I'm a firm believer that if you do the right things, the rewards will come down to you, your shareholders will give you the valuations, your customers will buy from you, and you will have employees who are thriving for the purpose that you stand for. Now, Eithne, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think we'll talk about some of the challenges that lie ahead, but it is serious.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's what we really need to realize. Ahmed, again, as I say, you know, we're getting there. I think the process has started without a doubt. We are, and many of the big companies are beginning to decarbonize without a doubt. But, you know, there needs to be probably better incentives in place. And what do you think needs to happen for the green supply chain to become, you know, well, more sustainable, but to become a reality? I mean, it has to actually happen.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for hosting this very important panel, Eithne, and thanks for FII for having us. When it comes to incentives, I see them from 2 different angles. There are the short term, even though acute, very effective incentives. And in this category, of course, comes all the government subsidy and support that comes from the different governments. But in my opinion, this is not very sustainable. This is short-lived. As long as the subsidies are there, companies and people are going to change their behavior. Once they are not there, then they will go back basically to what's more convenient for them. What's more sustainable, in my opinion, is the shift in consumer behavior and the shift in the eco-consciousness of consumers nowadays. Consumers nowadays are more conscious of the carbon footprint of different products and how they impact the planet negatively. And when they make a choice, going through an aisle in a supermarket, picking product A over product B, companies will react. Companies will definitely dig deeper into ways how to make their supply chains more eco-friendly, greener, and adopt practices in that regard. And going back to the point that you have mentioned on cost efficiency, what's interesting nowadays is there are some companies who try to become greener, more eco-friendly, and along the way, they made significant impact on their cost long-term. One noticeable example is Walmart. So when Walmart decided to launch a big initiative.
It's funny because it's the last one I would have ever thought about.
Oh, really?
Think about thousands of people going in and filling up shopping trolleys with junk.
No, they have done significant work in that regard. They simply went back to their suppliers and the whole supply chain and asked them basically for ways to source the same material, but from better sources, greener, more sustainable sources, and help them innovate ways in packaging, in sourcing, in transportation to cut costs. The net result of that effort was not only becoming greener and eco-friendly, but also cutting costs and becoming better, delivering better bottom line, which every single company care about.
And I mean, that's so encouraging to, be coming up with a big player like that in the industry that's doing something. Again, I think peer pressure from a player like that are pretty good. Now, Nomi, you like to talk about the 4R circularity framework. And in many ways, to shift to that green supply chain, do you think we sort of need to go back to basics? Have we lost that in a way?
I think we do. So let me just introduce our 4R framework.
Please.
The first is rethink. So how do we engineer, develop, and produce our products, keeping the life cycle efficiency of what we are producing in mind? So it's there right from the very design stage.
Yes.
Second, reduce. How do we reduce waste from water, from the amount of power we consume, the amount of raw materials we use, and we use the lean principles to just reduce waste overall. 3, reuse. And that's where a company like us that's been around for 130 years is looking to extend the life of our products by providing upgrades, life cycle extensions, et cetera. So how do we make that kit last longer and longer? And by the way, on reuse, I've been shamed into buying used shirts. My last 4 shirts were from a thrift store because my 16-year-old daughter shamed me into not going to a high street in London to buy my shirts.
And he's looking pretty fashionable on
it's
it, huh?
practicing at home.
He's looking pretty smart.
And the last is recycle. And so GE being one of the largest wind turbine operators, for example, we're now manufacturing blades from recycled blades that have reached end of life. And these are now certified and they're being put out to use. So that's sort of our 4R framework. And I think it is going back to the basics, isn't it, Eithne?
I mean, absolutely, but just as a player, as a GE, and let's say I'm a shareholder, surely I want you to sell more. So if you're making a product that's going to last longer, when there's been a sort of, over the years, I think we've been making products that only last a while and then sadly we have to throw them out. So if I'm a shareholder, are you really, looking after my interests?
Eithne, because the size of what we're trying to solve.
Obviously, I'm a wicked shareholder. I have no feelings, and I don't care.
Let me tell you, we are looking to electrify the world as power consumption per capita just skyrockets. There's still 750 million people around the world without power, and we're looking to decarbonize at the same time. Take the kingdom, for example, moving away from dependence on oil for power generation to state-of-the-art, most efficient gas with carbon capture and renewables.
You're not answering my question. If I'm a really vicious shareholder and I'm looking for better profits, and you've decided to make this incredible gadget that's now going to last 100 years, whereby if you made it for 50, then we'd make double the money. Is there any conflict there, or has the shareholder, have they a warmer, more holistic approach?
And I'm saying it's an and, it's not an or. So we will preserve the life cycle of our products out there, but yet the world is hungry for more power. So I think you'd be very happy as a shareholder of GE Vernova.
Okay, I will. I'll have to. There'd be peer pressure on me anyway to back off, wouldn't there? But thank you. Ahmad, talk to me about regulations, because when we look around the world, we have different regulations in different countries. And when we look at policies, in many ways, we're making them up as we go, because this is uncharted territory. So how do we actually adapt to new policies and really convert them into actionable steps, so to speak?
Regulations, in my opinion, is the easy part. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
Drafting a policy and getting it approved is very hard and takes a long time, differing from one country to another. What's really challenging is those policies taking effect, and for companies and consumers to not only know about the policies, but actually adapt their practices and frameworks internally to those policies. And we have seen policies that are in place for years, and still they haven't taken their full effect. And from experience and from my point of view is, I believe regulatory technology play a significant role in that regard, converting those lifeless policies into a pleasant digital experience for companies and individuals alike. I strongly believe that people are genuinely good, but don't make it hard for them. Just make it simple, make it pleasant, make it cost-effective for them, and they are going to do the right thing. So once it's a pleasant journey, digital journey for them, they are going to use those systems and have transparency, clarity on what's the next steps, ease of use, and comply with the eco-friendly regulations as well. We have seen many examples that are related to environment to adopt those policies. One good example in Saudi Arabia to streamline supply chains is the multiple platforms that we have built for importers to make it clear for them, and basically any shipment they are going for consumer products, they are going to import it in Saudi Arabia, they can get it pre-cleared, so it doesn't stay at the port even for hours. It gets pre-cleared using this platform, this technology that we have built in collaboration with the different governmental agencies. This is just a small example, but RegTech in general is a good tool to ensure that policies take place and make an impact and effect as soon as they are rolled out.
No, and I take your point, and I think maybe in Saudi Arabia we have a more sort of holistic view of regulation because everybody is in the same direction and moving. But sometimes I get the feeling around the world, the regulator just doesn't sit there and have a chat and say, how can we put regulations in place that will make everybody happy and they'll do the right thing? I doubt if it's the first thing on their mind. It's like, regulations, they have to abide or go. But stay with the regulation for me on this one, because I think, Nomi, you can maybe add to this a little bit. Because earlier on one of the AI panels, they were talking about people are regulating at the moment who don't understand AI, because simply, even the geniuses that were on that panel, they said, we don't fully understand it. So how can people regulate on something they really don't know? And is there a fear that, they're not really looking? I mean, I'm hearing that in Europe, they're over-regulated to the point whereby life has just become so tough for everybody in industry and everything. I mean, where's the sweet spot for regulation? Is there such a thing? Or do you all have to be talking more?
I think, look, the pendulum can swing this way, right? And the only way that we will find the right spot is by having dialogue and collaborating, period.
And again, but as industry players, do you actually get the opportunity sometimes to have those conversations?
All the time. We, as a company, as a global company that's operating in over 100 countries, we will go and talk to the British government about what we're doing in the United States as best practices. We will bring what we have learned in Saudi Arabia with regards to best practices and take it to another country. Because as business, we are trying to do the best thing. We're trying to find the most optimal solution with regards to complying with laws and regulations, while making sure that those laws and regulations are enabling, not slowing us down.
And I think that's ultimately it. Let's talk a little bit about technology. And again, I'll bring you both in that. But Ahmed, let's look at technology. I mean, how is it helping? Is it hindering? A lot of new and emerging technology here. And again, I'm asking you to take a global look at this. It's not all created equally. We don't all have access. So again, how is this, again, where does technology really help us to leapfrog perhaps a bit?
Sure. The theme of today in FII is intelligent algorithms. And intelligent algorithms have been there for a while now. Even the most cutting-edge advanced technologies like AI have been there for more than 10 years. What's becoming different nowadays is these advanced technologies are now democratized, are now off the shelf. Anyone can use them. They used to be only for a few companies that are there in the Silicon Valley who have who can afford basically to have such technology. Now it's not only cheap, it's easy to adopt, it's plug and play, and companies can actually leverage cutting edge technology in order to optimize their supply chain.
And more people know how to use it. There's no excuse anymore.
Absolutely. It's not rocket science anymore. So anyone, companies and individuals alike, can use many of the advanced technologies that are available nowadays. But as you mentioned, technology is not made equal. When it comes to AI and basically, it's all around optimization and predictability. So more optimized, efficient, in our case, supply chain, and higher predictability when it comes to demand and supply as well. However, when we talk about blockchain, for example, it doesn't help much when it comes to efficiency, but it helps way more in transparency and also in accountability, because there is no central, basically, administration for the blockchain. It's visible to anyone. It can hold every single player and stakeholder accountable on what they do and where they source from, and basically give full visibility on their supply chain. One interesting study that was done by and published recently by McKinsey showed that using off-the-shelf, ready-made AI models in supply chains can cut costs and time by more than 20%.
Wow. Okay.
So it's not only eco-friendly, it's not only the right thing to do, it's even better financially and better for the bottom line.
Nomi, on technology, you look back at a company like GE, and okay, GE Vernova now, but
Thank you.
Bring us back in the day, you know, when 100 years ago, when it was all doing. We look at GE over the years, and technology is kind of your middle name, really. Isn't
Right.
it? Again, how important is it that you keep moving with that technology? And where do you see, I suppose, the big advantage of technology for the supply chain right now?
Look, I think you touched on some of it. I think it's all of the manual processes can get automated, number one. All of the preconditioning, screening criteria, et cetera, all of that is addressed. So your front-end window to get the information and process, procurement departments are very actively leaning into that. I think there's another element where we are now pushing our suppliers to be transparent about their Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions. That's the other area. So what's being demanded of us by our shareholders and our customers,
Right.
we're asking that of our suppliers.
Do you find any resistance?
It's a journey, Eithne. I think the fact that we're now very actively beginning to screen and process. So we did last year 600 plus audits on our supply chain. And we looked at that from emissions. We looked at that from an ethical viewpoint as well, right? Are they meeting representation, safety, et cetera?
Yes.
And only 500 and something made it. So we had a good attrition that came out of that because we applied the same standards to our suppliers, and digital was a big part of expediting that. Otherwise, we'd spending a year doing all of the stuff that we're now able to do with, you know, points of buttons and getting predictability and data analysis and dashboarding.
Talk to me a little bit. I'm just getting a 3-minute thing, and my watch says at least 10. Where's our dear people here?
I think it's.
No. Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, then we're squeezing it now. Sorry about that. I think they squeezed us and didn't tell us. Stay with me a minute because you mentioned something about ethical supply chain. So I want you to go into that one, and then maybe you'll pick up a little bit on that too, because I think that's sincerely important. I mean, we're looking at safety, but we're also looking at a world whereby not all things are equal. What happens on a shipping port, even here in the Middle East, mightn't be happening in Africa, in Asia, and somewhere else. Come into that ethical supply chain for me.
So I think the first thing I want to highlight is that, again, as a global company, the standards we apply to our suppliers in the United States are the same standards we're applying to a supplier in Bangladesh. So it's a good start. So we're committed to advancing the working conditions in our supply chain across 4 areas. Safety. So are our suppliers conducting themselves where they are putting human life at the center of what they do? Because it is the biggest part of what we do at GE Vernova. Representation. So are the people who are benefiting a correct representation of the society? Number 3, ethics. Is that company operating with the right ethics and with the right human rights?
Yes.
So this framework, which we use, is actually completely in line with the United Nations framework.
Okay.
And so we put all of our suppliers through that rigor, and it's back again to the audits that we do and make sure. And I don't want to name geographies, but there are countries where we are striking suppliers off the list because they're not meeting our standards.
No, and that's good to see you're holding them to account. I mean, saying on that to you, Ahmed, too, but also look at the consequences if people do not actually do this and make the supply chain work and go green.
Let me focus mainly on decision makers in companies. So, because I think they have significant influence on that. Not making the change not only will impact and accelerate basically the impact in climate change and on the environment that we see, but also crucially for companies, every single company that is not basically adopting this greener, more eco-friendly approach will find themselves left behind because people preferences is changing. And as Nomi mentioned, they're dealing with different stakeholders. We are not talking about only consumers, but also shareholders. They will see their stock price dropping, their sales dropping, because people having option right now, and they want to do the right thing, especially when cost is not a factor.
Okay, quickly, I have to wrap it up here. Stay with me, Ahmed. If there's a call to the industry out there, call to action, something that can be done quickly, what should we be doing to make that supply chain greener?
It has never been easier, faster, and more cost-effective to adopt new technologies in order to optimize supply chains and make it greener and more environmentally friendly. Now is the time. It makes sense from all perspectives.
It's a no-brainer. Nomi, I'll leave you the closing word here.
I would say I fully agree with that there are enabling tools, but I think we as the industry need to wake up. No shareholders, no customers, and no employees. So I think it's time to really take action, putting it to one extreme.
I like that. So if we actually, if we don't do what people want us to do, we're out of business.
You're out of business.
So that's really easy. I want to thank you both, Ahmed. Thank you so much, and Nomi. And thank you, our dear audience, for staying with us. Thank you, gentlemen, so much.
Thank you, Nomi.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
We have to speed up.